Hey everyone, time for another 3 at 3 on Solar PV. I'm Jen Runyon, Chief Editor of Renewable Energy World.
And I'm Paula Mintz, Chief Market Research Analyst, SPV Market Research.
Hey Paula, how are you feeling?
And I'm getting slowly better here. I'm
Good,
recovering.
good,
Thank
good. We want you healthy. So,
you.
all
Yeah,
right,
too.
we take three topics. We talk about them for just about 3 minutes each in the solar industry. And today we're going to look at steel tariffs, uh, solar manufacturing, and then a little aside on conferences.
Yep.
So let's start with steel tariffs. We have an official proclamation from the White House as of Wednesday, March 8th. There will be tariffs on steel and aluminum. 25% on steel, 10% on aluminum.
Yes, there will be. Yes. We knew there would be, and we knew they would probably be more than what the
Well,
Secretary recommended, and indeed they are.
they are. They are. And Paul and I just spent a long time looking at the exact products that will be
Yes,
have tariffs, and the solar industry
yes.
will indeed be harmed. I mean, it's not just raw steel. There's lots of finished products, assemblies, but these are the questions. You know, when I reached out to someone at QuickMount, he was saying, you know, they do import some parts and pieces. Some of them are finished assemblies. Some of them are just part of an assembly that they finish in house. This is all going to get very complicated very quickly. But the bottom line is, it's going to cost more.
Yeah, lots of work for lawyers and consultants poring over the very long document we spent some time on, trying to figure out what exactly. And I think the important point is the conclusion we came to is that it's not just raw steel, which I had assumed it would not be. I had
Mm-hmm.
assumed it would have been more. I think we both did. And that affects all of energy,
Yeah,
all of energy.
yeah, it's
So,
pretty unique, you know, to have the entire energy industry aligned against one thing, and this is it. I mean, you know, I follow lots of news stories, and they're everybody from the American Petroleum Institute to the solar energy industry, the wind energy industry. I mean, nobody thinks these are a good idea. This goes very much against any kind of energy dominance that the U.S. is trying to achieve.
yeah, it's counter any logical understanding of what tariffs do. Tariffs, in the end, are a tax on the consumer.
Yeah.
And no matter what, even though at this point, temporarily, Canada and Mexico are exempt while NAFTA negotiations go on, doesn't mean that steel from Canada won't, and aluminum, by the way, both are important to solar,
Mm-hmm.
um, doesn't mean that those prices for steel and aluminum from Mexico, if they come through there from Canada, won't increase. Why wouldn't they?
Right,
You know,
right, right. Exactly. I mean, if you're gonna, Canada now knows it just has to raise the price less than 25%, and it can still get away with it.
yeah. And when you take a look at it, he wants to revive the industry. I believe a quote is, because if you don't have steel, you don't have a country, which I don't really think you can parse that sentence into anything meaningful.
Mm.
You, it does, industries don't spring up overnight. It does take time. So it's the unintended consequences that there's a price increase to all of the buyers of these products and byproducts and raw steel and et cetera. It gets, in some industries, it can get passed on. In solar industry, it really can't.
Mm.
And so we're all looking at margin squeeze here.
Yeah.
And as we were talking about, we've talked about this and talked about this and talked about this. The only time the solar industry's vulnerability in this regard is revealed is when there's a hiccup. And this is
Yes.
more than a hiccup. This is a case of the flu along the value chain.
Uh huh.
And when something like this happens, it reveals how tight the margins that is why you need a reasonable gross margin, because you want to absorb these bumps.
Right.
It's like in your household. They always say have 6 months of living expenses, in case there's a bump right
Mm-hmm.
in your road. And here's a bump in our road, revealing yet again how vulnerable we are, and exposing, right in time for conference season, since I know we're going to talk about that too, exposing how dangerous it is to keep touting how big we're getting without talking about all the nuance down the value chain.
Absolutely. I mean, we do have announced repercussions from the solar tariffs from SunPower, right?
Yes, it was on the news out in sunny at this point California, though we are expecting rain. Thank heavens, because we're back in a drought.
Yeah.
So they announced that they were going to have reductions. Now, whether or not they will, because this again bumps up, affects the margin, right? So whether or not they will, they have to actually do it for it to be a fact. This is an announcement. Announcements aren't news. I know we've hit on that again and again and again. And, with Jinko, we were talking about there's legislation. Doesn't mean that's, the fact that there's legislation
Yeah.
is a bit.
Well, let's explain that for a minute. So, right. So, potentially as a reaction to solar tariffs, JinkoSolar has now officially been named in legislation in the state of Florida seeking incentives to create a manufacturing facility in Jacksonville, Florida, which, again, we talked about when this was first a rumor, we don't know if it'll really get built. Paula is very skeptical that it could, could take anything less than a number of years, right?
Well, skeptical is part of my job description as an analyst. So,
Yeah.
Just because you announce something, and hey, that does show movement that legislation is before, but let's face it, what we were talking about 2 weeks ago has just happened. Their costs are now raised. This isn't just raw steel, it's products, right? So the cost of everything just increased. And, unless it's all shipped through Canada real quickly, and even then they probably increased. The cost, if they want to act as a developer out of that facility, those costs increased.
Yeah.
Everything increased in this thin margin industry, and again, ITC driven market, so you have to. Manufacturers are very cautious. They may make a lot of announcements that, when you really look at them, don't make a lot of sense, and these announcements then get repeated endlessly and then exaggerated upon, and conjecture is added to them. But in the end, they've got to take a look at the markets, and as we said, okay, is the market in Canada going to boom? Is the Latin American keep going, even though tender bidding is really pressured there? In the US, is that market going to have legs? Meanwhile, you have not only the solar tariffs increasing costs, or in the middle, not to the end, you can't really pass these on, and now you have this.
Right.
They may still have some manufacturing, but how soon will that be? It's not going to be overnight, and their costs increase. It's just, if the reason for the solar tariffs, which I don't think either of us think is true, was to spur solar manufacturing in the U.S., this isn't the way to do it. You're adding cost.
Yeah, well, right. By putting a tariff on steel is not going to help any manufacturer anywhere. Yeah.
As we discussed earlier, when we were talking about what to talk about today, the SunPower announcement, until they actually lay people off,
it's still an announcement, right?
Still just an announcement, and even if they do and blame the steel tariffs, that may be part of it, but not all of it. JinkoSolar, the fact that you can, because you're a great journalist, can dig out information about where this something is before the city council legislation for money. That's great, but as you pointed out, it won't necessarily pass because they have other pressures, right?
Sure, absolutely. So, it's a lot of money that they're looking for.
It's a lot of money, and then will they deliver? I'm not going to give it right now, but I can give you a lot of examples of announcements about things like this, building manufacturing, that don't actually deliver. Here's one, actually. Suntech in Arizona. I was at the conference years ago where they announced to great fanfare that they were going to have module assembly and cell manufacturing, and that facility was open about 2 years. And it never ramped. Never.
Yeah.
And they a lot of money in Arizona for that.
Yeah.
So There's an example.
I was actually remembering many years ago in San Diego for a conference that doesn't exist anymore. We went in toward the Soytech factory.
Oh, yeah.
That was this big facility making really cool products, and about 2 years later, it was done. And that whole company left. I mean, that company left the solar industry entirely.
I know. I'll tell you what, if I were in the CSP industry right now, I would, there's, there's always a lot of hope for CSP, and the U.S. government really likes DOE really likes CSP.
DOE does, yes.
Like solar in general, but they do like CSP. And their costs, how are you going to set up that it so directly affects them?
Yes, indeed.
Plus, as we pointed out, tracker manufacturers, mounting structures, it's the unintended consequences, which we touched on last week, are, and it reveals something about our industry that we really need to start taking a look at.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we're just about out of time, but let's just go 1 minute on PowerGen. PowerGen 2018, Orlando, Florida. Paul and I both attend. We'd love to see you there. If you are interested in speaking at the conference, we now have an entire track dedicated to just solar. Last year we had large-scale renewables. This year we have just solar, just wind. We've got energy storage. We actually added a microgrid track. We've got really exciting things to talk about. We want to hear from you, so please submit an abstract. Our deadline is March 16th. Paula's one of the graders. She's a really tough grader, so make sure it's a good abstract. You have really important topics to discuss.
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say. We want to be relevant to our industry and the other renewable industries, and the way to do that is you guys. So submit abstracts, make them relevant to what's going on. For my sake and other graders, please cut out the PR pitch because I don't read them anyway. So, and I know the others don't read them anyway.
The PR pitches. She reads the abstracts, just not the PR pitch part.
And if the abstract itself is a pitch, and I do know some conferences like the pitch, I skip right through it, try to get through facts, and eliminate any abstract that is all pitch and no detail.
Yeah.
So, and it's for you guys. I mean, conferences are where we gather and, boost ourselves up for the next year or the rest of this year and learn really important information about how to manage an industry that's, let's face it, vulnerable.
Yeah. All right. On that note, please submit your abstracts, and we'll see you next time on 3 at 3 on Solar PV.
Woohoo!
Bye.
Bye.